I want to jump from there to Mr. Fingerhut. Let's talk for a moment about how Jewish federations across the United States have worked with mayors and their teams in actually strengthening security, of course, not just for the Jewish community, but for other faiths.
Yeah, thank you, Nori. It's great to be here. And I know she's not with us anymore, but I want to acknowledge the extraordinary leadership of Senator Rosen on leading on anti-Semitism in the U.S. Senate. Well, as Michael Masters mentioned, and of course our close partners at the Secure Community Network, the security of a community is really a partnership between local and in the U.S. state, and of course the national authorities. But the rubber meets the road in the local community, as the mayor and the superintendent on this panel know. And so for Jewish federations, having a focused community security initiative in every single Jewish community, regardless of size, is our primary goal. These community security initiatives consist of professional leadership on the ground and resources to train and organize all of the Jewish communal institutions. That training and those professionals are recruited and trained in part by our partners at the Secure Community Network. The funds are raised in a partnership with local federations, almost always on the lead, but also with additional national support. All of this comes under the umbrella of livesecure.org. You can find the information at livesecure.org. There are about 45 community security initiatives already underway in our federation communities. Now, each of them is there to complement, not to replace or be separate from the local law enforcement efforts. And in building our relationships with local law enforcement in each community, our goal is to work with them and together with all the other communities of faith and ethnic communities so that we have one integrated and seamless effort. But it is true, as Michael pointed out with the statistics and Senator Rosen, that part of our job in every Jewish community, with every federation community security initiative, is to help sensitize local law enforcement to the fact that the Jewish community, even if it appears to be an affluent and safe community on the surface, is disproportionately the target of hate crimes. And so our essential partnership with local law enforcement and with all the other communities of faith to build out that secure community across each of our Jewish communities in North America is an essential part of our work.
Mr. Fingerhut, if we're talking about funding for the security of Jewish communities, should that be a key priority for local governments? I mean, how do the Jewish federations actually work with cities on that issue, and what more can they do?
Well, the answer, of course, is yes. But first, I want to thank the mayor and the superintendent for the very strong statements and leadership they clearly are demonstrating in their communities. And I also want them to know, I want all the mayors who are participating in this important conference to know that our communities are raising extensive amounts of private funds to build our infrastructure. You know, you mentioned earlier, was mentioned about schools and that parents shouldn't have to worry about security coming to schools. Well, schools want to teach and they want to bring programs to students. They don't want to have to spend money on security, but they are. And camps and Jewish community centers and synagogues all are investing private funds, often led by the fundraising of the Jewish community federations. We estimate over $30 million is being raised and allocated locally by federations already today. And that number is surely going to double and triple in the coming years. But private funds can't do the job. Ultimately, it is the government's responsibility to keep us safe. And we understand that local funds are tight and that local governments are constrained. And so one thing that the mayors on this conference can do is join with us, and many already have joined with us, in advocating at the state and the federal level for funds. We have a very important program that was created in the wake of 9/11 called the Nonprofit Security Grant Program in the federal government. This year, it was doubled from $90 to $180 million. If you go on our livesecure.org website, you'll see all the materials about how to apply for these funds. We need the mayors to help us tell their representatives and senators and tell their federal authorities. I'm sure it works the same way in Canada, that these funds are desperately needed. They are making the difference in physical security of every facility, the cameras, the security walls, all of the steps that are needed. And then, though they are not, they're not quite as capable financially as the federal government, state governments are also an important source of funding. To date, we have 11 states that have created security grant programs for the nonprofit and faith-based institutions, their community. I apologize, I don't know the number in the provinces in Canada, Superintendent, but this is an important source of funds. And once again, mayors are very organized and have a very strong voice with their state legislators and their governors, with their members of Congress and the president, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and the other organizations. So this is a really important area for collaboration, because we cannot do this with private funds alone. This has to have the leadership of our government, of our level, all levels of government. And I'll just conclude by saying that, regrettably, this is not going to go away as a cost. It is a new added layer of costs for our communities, for our nonprofit sectors, for our faith-based institutions, our synagogues, all of our churches and mosques, and it is going to be permanent. If anything, it's going to go up, as Michael Masters talked about, the growing sophistication of the threats, and therefore the growing response is going to be needed. But we know it works. The training, the security cameras, the doors, all the steps that have been taken have saved lives. They've saved lives in synagogues, they've saved lives in churches, they've saved lives in mosques and in community centers of all kinds. And that's why we have to make sure that we have the resources needed. The Jewish federations will be there to advocate, will be there to raise private funds, and we need the partnership of all the mayors in this conference.
Right. Well, from what you say, maybe it's time to integrate funding as a really long-term part of the plan, long-term solution, and not something that sort of comes and goes and that local communities have to fight for anew each time.